Hey everyone, so in this video I want to take a quick look at another asset package on the Unity store, this time Explorer Girl by Alex Sopp. This is a fairly new package. It was released April 29th, 2021, which as of the time of this recording is just under 3 months ago. This one sells for just under $10 USD, so $9.99 USD, and decide for yourself if you feel that it is worth it. If you do purchase it, you then go to Window, Package Manager. Package Manager opens up. Make sure you're in My Assets, and then you'll see it in alphabetical order. You click on the Download button, then you click on the Import button, and then it will be in the project that you're working on. So as typical, you get the prefabs, and then you get a sample scene. I'm not going to review the sample scene like I normally do because the sample scene is just the prefab in like this demo showcase mode where they're just cycling through the animations and there's really nothing else to see. So I figured I'd jump right into a few anomalies with this package, a few things you should know, as well as an example of implementation, which is one of the main reasons why I do this. So if we go to the Explorer Go folder and you go to the prefab folder, you're going to notice there's only one prefab there. If you open this up, you can see that they're this red color. Now, if you checked this package on the website, if you look at this package on the website, you'll see that it shows and even says 3 skins. So it shows red, green, and blue. So where are the other 2? Because typically, I don't know about all packages because I've only bought some, but like for instance, I bought a tank package a few weeks ago, and there were 3 sets of tanks. I think it was green, yellow, and blue, something like that. And sure enough, they made 3 sets of all the tanks. So even though they were identical except for the coloring, they still gave you those duplicates. This particular creator did not do that, so it takes just a few seconds to adjust for that. So what you would do is you would make the duplicates yourself. So you could click on this, do Control D, it duplicates the mesh. Make sure you're in the prefab section, and then you're going to select the body sections. And then over here under materials, this might actually be collapsed on yours, so expand it. And you can see it says body 2, so just change it to one of the other ones. We'll do body 1. You can see they're blue now, and then repeat for the helmet. So you'd select all the helmet sections, and then you go again to body 1, and now the helmet is blue. And then you can duplicate the original again, open that one up, and then again select these all for body. And for material, you can do, I believe, 3. Yep, that's green. And then repeat for the helmet. And that is also green. So again, very easy to work around. It'd been nice if all 3 had been included, but now that you've done it, you don't have to do it again. So it took all of 1 minute, 2 minutes to adjust for that. No big deal. But I did want you to know that just so you don't think the other ones are missing. You just have to kind of do it yourself. Okay, so let's actually watch a demonstration of this. So let's just quickly create a plane, and we'll just set this at like 0, 0, 0. And let's just quickly give this a color other than white because it's so hard to see anything. Let's do material. We won't change the name. We'll just make it like a blue. Something kind of neutral. Okay. So let's take one of those prefabs and put it into our scene. And what we'll do is we'll actually keep the camera behind them because the demonstration I'm going to do will be of an endless runner because that's what I'm going to be using this character for anyway. So I figured I'll just do that. If you want to see other demonstrations, let me know, and I certainly can do that as well. So in this demonstration, I'm going to presume that the world is moving and not the character. And so I'm not going to move along the Z-axis. We're just going to move along the X-axis when you're strafing left and right, because usually endless runner games, there's 3 lanes. And For jumping, we'll jump on the y-axis is where the movement will be, the velocity will be added. Okay, so to make this work, our character needs a couple things. So add component, physics, box collider. So in this particular demonstration, we're only using the box collider to help with jumping so we can detect when the collision with the ground has occurred. We're going to set this to a trigger and we're going to edit. Let's bring that bottom up to under the feet. Bring this up to just above the head. And no, I'm not going to be exact because we're not actually doing any kind of obstacle collision. So that's the kind of game balance you'd work on as far as, how forgiving or unforgiving do you want to be. Okay. So that's good for this demonstration. Let's just check. So actually that's a little bit below the feet. We want that to be closer. Okay. And yep, we want this to be a trigger. We don't want it to be solid. Okay, so we added a box collider and made it the basic, not the shape of them, but the basic size. Add physics, rigid body. We're not going to use gravity to begin with, but will use gravity for jumping because right now, since this is a trigger, if you use gravity, they'll just sink through the floor and we don't want that. Okay, so we added a box collider, we added rigid body. We will go ahead and add a script, which I already wrote. Let me just drag and drop it, then we'll get back into it. And it's going to look a little wordy, but it's really rinse and repeat. So we're doing 3 things, well, 4 total. We're going to look for a button being checked. So these are very, very similar with what's being done. Okay, so in the update section, if input.getKeyDown A, so if the A key is pressed, we want something to happen. Get component animator. We haven't looked at the animator yet. Play left strafe in quotes. This has to be the exact spelling, and I believe it has to be it's case sensitive as well. So you'll see this exact verbiage in a few seconds. Get component rigid body. We just added the rigid body. Velocity equals new vector 3, -3, 0, 0. So -3 on the horizontal axis because they're just strafing left and right. We're not going to move on the y-axis. That would be up and down. So that would be like a jump. So if you're jumping over an object or climbing up a ladder or something. And we're not moving along the z-axis because like I said, in this demonstration, we're presuming that it's the world moving towards us. I have a few demonstrations where the world doesn't actually move, where it's a texture scroll, so it makes the world look like it's moving towards you. Either case, you're not going to have a movement on the z-axis. And then start coroutine, stop strafe. Stop strafe is down here, which we'll get to in just a second. Now, the rest of this is pretty much rinse and repeat. Again, we're looking to see if a key is being pressed down. So if input.getKeyDown, this time we're looking to see if it's the D key. Get component animator.play right strafe looks kind of familiar. It's the same type of thing. We're just playing a different animation. Get component rigid body dot velocity equals new vector 3, 3, 0, 0. Again, should look really familiar. It's the same thing, just moving in the opposite direction. We're moving +3 rather than -3. And again, we've got to run this coroutine, which we're going to look at in a second. Again, input.getKeyDown space. So this time we're looking to see if the space key is being pressed. Get component animator play jump. Again, same type of functionality. We're accessing the animator and we're playing an animation based on its actual name. Get component rigid body dot velocity equals new vector 3, 0, 4, 4. Again, very similar, but in this case, we're adding it to the y-axis. We're having them jump up in the air. Remember how I said we shut off gravity? Well, now we're going to turn on gravity. That way, from the moment that you're jumping, gravity's taking effect because we don't want your character to move in a linear fashion. It would look kind of weird for them to just jump at a constant velocity and then fall at a constant velocity. So what we're doing is we're saying jump at this velocity, but now we're going to add gravity, so that way your character will slow down a little bit more naturally. And then what happens is, since gravity is taking effect, your character will then fall back to the ground, which means we need to know when to stop, which brings us to the next section. On, trigger, enter, collider, other. So if the name of that other, so if other.name equals plane, which it is indeed called, if the other object that the object this script is attached to, which is the character, if this collides with another object and the name of that other object is plane, then we want to do a couple things. Get component rigid body velocity equals new vector 3, 0, 0, 0. In other words, we're wiping out all the velocities. They're not moving left, they're not moving up, they're not moving forward or back. And again, like I said in this example, they're never moving forward or back. Get component rigid body use gravity false. So once we collide with the ground, shut gravity off, come back to this default state. The gravity is off. And then the final thing, stop strafe. This is just timing to make sure you're in the proper position in the lane. So yield return new, wait for seconds, 0.6f. So like I said, not going to explain yield return new. Just know that this sentence, this line, I should say, not sentence, this line as a whole is giving the instruction to wait for a period of time measured in seconds. It's 0.6 of a second, and as is pretty consistent with Unity, C# I should say, if you're using a number that's a decimal, you typically have to put in an F or else it confuses Unity. So 0.6f. Get component rigid body velocity equals new vector 3, 0, 0, 0. Again, so you were moving in a direction, okay? You move that direction for 0.6 of a second, and then you stop because now you're where you're supposed to be. In your final game, you'd probably put one more line of code in here to make sure that your character is indeed exactly in the middle of that lane, so you don't have like long-term creep, slowly creeping off the center of the lane. It's easy enough just to do a single line to do that, but that's really out of the scope of this. I'm trying to give you an example of this specific character as opposed to a full game. So if I did not forget anything, that will do it. Let's go over to the animator, because I did have to jerry-rig something. So here's the animator. You probably can't read these because I'm scrolled out. I just wanted to demonstrate that by default, all these were linked. See these arrows? Well, every one of these were linked because, again, this was like in a demo mode. This was in a showcase mode. You don't want that for your final project. You want to control what connects what, okay? So this will start in an idle, because typically you want to give your player like 3-second countdown or something, so they'll start idle. And then you create a transition. Just right click, make transition, and then you draw the line out to what you want it to be in. Well, we want it to be in running. We really want that to be the default status, okay? So we go out to running. Now, you should, I double clicked that by the way, you should be able to set this to loop time and get it to loop. For some reason, it's not. I'm not sure if it's because this is set as the default or what, but for some reason, this doesn't want to loop. So what I jerry-rigged is I just duplicated this with Control D, and then I just made a transition between itself. So it's going to look like one run cycle. It's actually a duplicated run cycle because for some reason, this didn't want to loop. So my apologies that I jerry-rigged this. But again, that's often the way game development is. You make something work, you can come back and fix it later. This should not have any kind of negative impact. Again, all I did was click on this, Control D to duplicate it, and then I right clicked and did make transition and have it transition back and forth. I think, like I said, I think it's because this is the default. So if I was to delete this, I think it would be fine, but I just wanted to throw that out there that for some reason I couldn't quite get it to work in this demonstration. Okay, so it goes from idle to running, from running to running, and then running to running back, so that way it's always in a running cycle. And as you can see, these other ones, we'll call out to them. We do a left strafe, and then you have the transition coming to run. If you do a right strafe, it has a transition coming back to run. You have a jump state, and then it'll come back to run. So we're always running as the default status because, again, this is an endless runner. If this was, say, a third-person shooter, you wouldn't do this. You would have everything return probably to idle, okay? And by the way, if someone knows why this didn't work, feel free to call out in the comments and I'll thank you and let you and make an update in another video. In the full project, I did not have this problem though, so I think it's the presence of this that's causing the issue. So anyways, very straightforward logic that you want these animations to always come back to whatever the default animation is. And in this case, it's running. So if I haven't forgotten anything, that should actually do it. So let me take one quick look. So box collider is a trigger. Rigid body, no gravity. We added the script, so I think that should do it. So they look around. They start running. I press A. They strafe and they're running. I press D. They strafe and they're running. Press D. They strafe and they're running. Press space. Jumps. Lands. A little bit too low. Their feet kind of went into it, but that's just tweaking the rigid body. Not the rigid body, excuse me, tweaking the box collider. The box collider needs to come down below their feet a little bit more, but that's about it. Okay, so good enough for one tutorial. So I hope this has helped you make a decision as to whether or not you feel this is an asset worth purchasing. Like I said, this is what I'm going to be using for my endless runner. And despite what I said about the other projects, this is probably the one that's probably going to come together first because endless runners have such a simple gameplay loop. And there's really only just so much room for expanding on that even I, with my tendency to give in to feature creep, probably can't mess this up. So I hope you found this useful. If there's any comments, feel free to leave the comments. If you like the video, please consider liking the video. Please consider subscribing because only about 5% of all views come from people who are subscribed. And if there's anything else you want to see, just let me know. And please do enjoy the rest of your day.